Welcome everybody. We're learning Tractate Shabbos, the Daf Nun Gimel Amud Aleph, 53a1. We ended off yesterday with the Mishnah that I'll go over the Mishnah quickly. It says the Mishnah continues enumerating cases in which a person may let his animal out into a public domain. On the Shabbos, a donkey may go out with a saddlecloth when it is tied onto his when it's tied to it. Rams go out attached, and ewes may go out held, tied, or fastened. Goats may go out with their udders tied, and Rabbi Menahse forbids all these cases except for that the case of ewes that go out fastened. Rabbi Yehuda, goats may go out with their udders tied for the sake of drying them, but not for the sake of being milked. So that was the Mishnah we ended off with yesterday. We'll start the Gemara in the top of 53a. The Gemara explained that the Mishnah's opening statement, the donkey may go out with a saddle cloth if it is tied on. So Omar Shmuel v'ushik shul Erev Shabbos means that the saddle cloth was tied on the donkey since before the Shabbos. Our Mishnah also implies the kitani. Donkey may not go out with a saddle cloth if it is not tied onto it. What does it mean that it's not tied at all? Pshita is obvious that he should not go out with a dilma. Perhaps the saddle cloth will fall off and one might come to carry it for Amos in the public domain. So there's no need for the Mishnah to teach such an obvious prohibition. Rather, it truly means that the saddle cloth was not tied on since before the Shabbos. Now, this implies that the first part of the Mishnah, which states that a donkey may go out with a saddle cloth if it is tied on, refers to a case where it was tied on since before the Shabbos. As Shmuel stated, Shmamim will learn a conclusive proof from this. A donkey may go out with a saddle cloth if it was tied onto it since before the Shabbos. However, he may not go out with a saddle even if it was tied onto it since before the Shabbos. A donkey may go out even with a saddle if it was tied onto it since before the Shabbos, provided that one does not tie breast straps onto it. Provided that one does not suspend a strap beneath its tail. What is the law as to whether one may put a saddle cloth on a donkey on the Shabbos? Omar lei muto, you're allowed to do it. Omar lei v'chi ma bein zel ukov. What's the difference between merdas and ukov, between a saddle cloth and the actual saddle? Ishtik. So Rabbi Barashi was silent. Plead the fifth, right? Right. Eisivei. So Ravasi bar Noson therefore challenged Rabbi Barashi ukov shagabi chamer, saddle that is on the back of a donkey. Lo yitaltilon be'odor. One may not move it with one's hand. One may walk the donkey to and fro in a courtyard, and the saddle will fall off by itself. Now that the Brisa say that one is not allowed to take a saddle off a donkey, is it even necessary to say that one is not allowed to put it on? From this Brisa, it is evident that one may not put a saddle on a donkey.
You can't ride it anyway.
He agrees with his Rav's, with his teacher Rav, Rabbi Zera. Rabbi Cheva Ravashi Amarav, Toilin Trasko Leveima b'Shabbos. One may hang a feed bag on an animal on the Shabbos. And Kal Vachomer, which to saddle cloth. Uma also the Mishum Tainug Shariach or Mishum Tzar Lekol Sheken. If you're allowed to do it for the animal pleasure, a feed bag is for the animal pleasure. Here, a saddle cloth, which is for the purpose of alleviating the animal's suffering, should be permitted all the more so. How it alleviates the animal's suffering? From cold.
I don't know.
It says from cold. Shmuel says saddle cloth is permitted. A feed bag, itraskol, is forbidden. Rav Chia Bar Yosef went and recounted the teaching of Rav before Shmuel. If that is what Abba said, he does not know anything at all about the laws of the Shabbos. When Rabbi Zera went up from Babylonia to Eretz Yisrael, Ashkech Rabbi Binyamin Bar Yosef Yosef v'Kamor Mishmei Rabbi Yochanan, Noisni Murdas al Gabi Chomer b'Shabbos. One may put a saddle cloth on a donkey on the Shabbos. Omar le Yishar v'chein Tirgum Arich b'Bavel. Well said, and Arich in Babylonia explained likewise. So Arich Manu, who is Arich? Shmuel. It's Shmuel. I have another name, Arich. Rav Nami Amor, but Rav also said it. Maybe Arich is Rav. Why do you say Shmuel? Elasham Dov Mesam Bered Rabbi Zera heard Rabbi Binyamin Bar Yosef conclude, "V'intolim Trasko b'Shabbos." One may not hang a feed bag on an animal on the Shabbos. Since regarding this point, Rabbi Binyamin followed Shmuel, not Rav. Omar le Rabbi Zera said to him, "Yishar v'chein tirgum arich b'Ovel." Well said, and Arich Shmuel in Babylonia explained likewise. The Chul Alu Mias Modas Mutar. So Gemara asks a question: Ma'ishna Mukov. At any rate, everyone agrees that a saddle cloth is permitted. Why is it different from a saddle, which is forbidden? It is different there in the case of a saddle, for it is possible that the saddle will fall off by itself.
You're not tying it down.
I guess if it's not tied, yeah.
I don't understand why anybody would want to put a saddle on Shabbos. Anyway, it's muktzah and you can't use it.
Maybe for right after Shabbos, so you can ride the animal. Preparation.
I can see
Which
that.
is another issue, preparing from...
Preparation is another thing. From Shabbos to the next day.
Sometimes also they want the animal to get used to a saddle. So one of the ways to do it is finally new animals, and meaning they never.
If you want to break the animal.
Yeah, you want to break it. You
so
want to make
then
sure.
put it on, tie it on Friday.
And leave it on. So this way the animal is used to having something on its back.
On Friday, you're gonna leave it on. So if it's all tied on Friday, then it shouldn't be a big deal if it's on for Shabbos. But then you're doing it for the purpose of training it, not for riding it.
According to this, it is a problem to have a saddle on Shabbos.
Okay, so then you can't do it.
So the Gemara asked the question. The question is, why is saddle different than a saddle cloth? If it is possible, the saddle will fall off by itself. Here, in the case of putting on a saddle cloth, the purpose is to warm the donkey. Whereas here, in the case of removing saddle, the purpose is to cool the donkey. When one's purpose is to warm the donkey, it is evidently suffering from the cold. However, when one's purpose to cool the donkey is not really suffering at all. This is a famous statement. This is accord with the maxim that people say, a donkey is cold even during the summer season. You know, people that constantly complain that they are cold.
Well,
So
when you get older, not older than me, my mother's always like that. My father was. I'll tell you a story about my friend. We went out to Ringland's Brothers Museum in Sarasota, and we were sitting there, and it was like 86 degrees. All of a sudden, a little sea breeze came. My parents had to put on sweaters. Okay.
so this is it says the donkey is even in July, August is very it's still cold. Really, we learned so far three things. We learned about the saddle. Rav and Shmuel both prohibit putting a saddle on a donkey because it gives the donkey no significant benefit. Feed bag, in the case of putting on a feed bag which gives the donkey pleasure, Rav permits, Shmuel prohibits. And saddle cloth, Rav and Shmuel both permit putting a saddle cloth on a donkey because it alleviates the animal's suffering. Regarding removing a saddle, Rav would rule that this is permitted because it gives the donkey pleasure. Emerges that Rav is contradicted by the Brisa, which explicitly forbids removing a saddle. It's not a problem because it's stated in several places. In the Gemara, Rav has the status of a Tana in that he has the authority to disagree with Tanaic rulings. Okay. This summarizes... these summaries reflects one understanding of this passage as is explained by Rashi. For further discussion, see commentaries on Tur and Shulchan Aruch. Okay. So you see the equinox of Tammuz, the purpose of removing yourself from a donkey on the Shabbos would be to let it cool down from the exertion of having carried a load before the Shabbos began. However, if one does not remove it, the donkey will not really suffer. Since the donkeys are chronically chilled, it will soon cool down of its own accord. On the other hand, putting a saddlecloth on a donkey this cold truly relieves it of suffering. I don't know how. So how do the donkeys manage in the winter, and what do they do in like a severe winter?
They grow more hair.
Think so?
Yeah. I don't know. Sounds like.
Okay, so let's continue. A horse may not go out into a public domain on the Shabbos with a fox tail or with a red strip between its eyes. A zav may not go out with his pouch. We learned it already. Remember the pouch of the zav?
Oh yeah, the pouch of the zav.
Yeah. And goats may not go out with a pouch on their udders. So with that, we learned there are two reasons: either to block their milk or to
get more fertile. To
get more fertile. And a cow may not go out with a muzzle on its mouth. Colts, it's the young horses, may not go out with feed bags around their mouth into a public domain. An animal may not go out with a shoe on its foot. Or with an amulet, even if it is proven effective. And in this respect, the law is more stringent for an animal than for a person. But an animal may go out with a bandage on a wound, the splints on a fracture, and with a placenta dangling out of it, and if one stops up the bell that is around its throat, and one walk around with it in a courtyard. Gemara shows how this Baisa contradicts Shmuel's view. Colts may not go out with feed bags around their mouth into a public domain. By specifying into a public domain, the Baisa implies it is only into a public domain that colts may not go with feed bags. But in the courtyard it is permitted. Now surely this Baisa refers even to grown colts. And it permits one to put feed bags on them in a courtyard for the sake of their pleasure. We see that even activities which only increase an animal's comfort rather than relieve it of actual suffering are permitted on the Shabbos. This conforms with the opinion of Rav and contradicts the opinion of Shmuel. The Gemara says, "Loi v'ktanim." No, the Baisa speaks of young colts. Umishum tsar, and it permits one to feed bags, or to put feed bags on them only for the sake of alleviating their suffering. Shmuel agreed that exertions to relieve an animal of suffering is permitted on Shabbos. Exertion, meaning you're putting an effort to alleviate the suffering of an animal, is permitted. This is also can be taught or inferred from the fact that the Baisa teaches the law of the fodder bag along with the law of the amulet, which implies that the case of the feed bag is dumya dekamia, is similar to the amulet. Just as the amulet serves to relieve the animal from suffering, so does the feed bag. Shmamina, a conclusive proof. So this is learn a conclusive proof from this. The Baisa has thus been reconciled with the view of Shmuel. However, it still contradicts Rav, who permits even activities that serve merely to increase an animal's comfort. In this case too, we are forced to invoke the rule that Rav has the authority to disagree with Tanoim. Rav had the similar authority as Tanoim. Did you know we put a kameh, an amulet, also on animals? So he said an animal may not go out with an amulet even if it is proven effective. Remember, if you're allowed to go with it on Shabbos or not, if it's proven 3 times, if it's effective or not, worked on the same problem or didn't work on the same issue. So, who write it, who didn't write it. Anyhow, so it says over here, the animal should not go out with the amulet, even if it's proven effective. So the Mishnah says, and a person may not go out into a public domain on the Shabbos when an amulet that is not proven effective. This implies that if it's proven, that you're allowed to. But if it is proven effective, the amulet is proven effective, it is permitted to go with it on Shabbos. The Gemara says, here too our Baisa speaks of an amulet that is not proven effective. That's why it's forbidden. But the Baisa teaches explicitly, even if it is proven effective, it's effective for men, but not necessarily proven effective for animal. But there's such a thing effective for men but not effective for animals. The Gemara says yes, it's possible. A human being has a muzzle. The muzzle helps him. And Beima doesn't have muzzle. So therefore doesn't have the support and the aid of the muzzle.
Yeah.
What is a mazel? So it says an interesting interpretation to mazel in number 9. It says mazel signifies a person's angel who advocates his cause in the heavenly court. You have an attorney upstairs who advocates his cause. So since only a person enjoys this assistance, an amulet is more likely to work for a person than for an animal. Another interpretation for mazel, alternatively, mazel means intelligence. in accord with this definition, Meiri explains here that an amulet is more effective for a person because a person believes in its therapeutic benefits. So I guess his intelligence is helping him. The converse, the converse is also true. An amulet that works for an animal will not necessarily work for a person, because an animal has a stronger constitution than a person. What does it mean, a stronger constitution?
It's stronger, like it can resist things more.
The Gemara point that people and animals are totally different in this regard, and hence even an expert in making amulets for one category cannot be relied upon for the other.
Maybe have a specialist that does it for.
So you have to be a specialty needs to be like a vet, spiritual vet, making amulet for animals.
Right, there are holistic vets.
There you go. The Gemara says, what does the Baisa mean by, in this respect, the law is more stringent for an animal than for a person? Do you think the statement refers to the law of an amulet? A sandal coit refers to the law of a shoe. The Baisa stated that an animal may not go out wearing a shoe, lest it fall off. A person, however, is allowed to wear shoes in a public domain. So Rav and Shmuel both agree that one may perform activities on the Shabbos for the sake of alleviating an animal's suffering. The Gemara challenges this ruling. Tashma sochin umefarkesin laodam. One may anoint a sore with oil and scrape off a scab for a person. Ve'ein sochin umefarkesin leveim. But one may not anoint a sore with oil or scrape off a scab for an animal. My love de'ikomako. Now, the Baisa surely refers to even to a case where the wound is still festering. Umishum tsar, and hence the statement is required for the sake of alleviating suffering. Yet the Baisa rules that he may not perform, that it may not be performed for an animal. The Gemara answers, Loi. No, the Gomar Mako, the Baisa refers exclusively to a case where the wound has finished, has healed. Umishum tainug, and the statement is performed only for the sake of giving pleasure. The Gemara raises another challenge to the ruling of Rav and Shmuel. Tashma be'imo sha'chozodam. If an animal suffers from a congestion of blood, ein ma'amidim lo yisu b'mayim v'shetitzan. One may not stand it in water so that it will cool off. Odom sha'chozodam. But if a person suffers from a congestion of blood, ma'amidim lo yisu b'mayim v'shetitzan. One may stand them in water so that he will cool off. This treatment is required to alleviate suffering, and yet it is forbidden in the case of an animal. Amaula gezera mishum shchikas samemonim. This prohibition is a preventative measure that was enacted for the sake of preventing the grinding of ingredients for medicines. Yochi Odom nami, one should not be allowed to stand a person in water either. So the Gemara answers, Odom nire kemeker. This is permitted in the case of a person because he appears to be cooling himself off from the heat of the day. Yochi beimo nam nire kemeker. So we can say the same thing about an animal. It appears like the animal is cooling off. The Gemara says, Ein meker lebeimo. One does not cool off animals. We just learned before that someone might take off the saddle for the animal to cool off. But do we decree preventative measures in the case of animals? If one's animal was standing outside the Shabbos boundary, one may call the animal so that it will come to him. Now we do not decree that the owner is forbidden to call the animal lest he come to walk outside his Shabbos boundary and bring the animal back by hand. This proves that where a financial loss could result, the loss of an animal, the sages do not apply preventative measure or preventative measures. The Baisa contradicts Ula's position that the rabbinic decree against medical treatment applies even to animals. The Baisa speaks of a case where the animal's Shabbos boundary overlaps the owner's Shabbos boundary and the animal is inside the owner's boundary. In such a case, there is no concern that the owner might go outside his boundary, hence no preventative measure is necessary to prevent them from doing so. So Ula asserted that the rabbinic prohibition against medical treatment, which was designed to prevent the grinding of medicinal ingredients, applies even in treating animals. The Gemara now notes that this is not accepted by all Tanoim. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak says, Shechikas samemonin gufa tanoihi. Grinding of medicines is itself a subject of dispute among Tanoim. With respect to treating animals, the Tanya, if an animal is sick because it has eaten an excess of vetches, one may not make it run in a courtyard so that its bowels will be loosened. Rabbi Yeshaya permits this. This law follows Rabbi Yeshaya. Master said in this Baisa, the Zav may not go out with his pouch, and any goats may not go out with a pouch on their udders. But it was taught in a different Baisa to the contrary. And goats may go out with a pouch on their udders. This second Baisa, which permits the goat's pouch, refers to one that is fastened securely. And this first Baita, which prohibits the pouch, refers to the one that is not fastened securely, and it might fall, and he might carry it. Rabbi Yosef rejects the solution in favor of different one. Rabbi Yosef Omar Tanoi Shokot Me'almo. Have you removed all the Tanoim from the world? Tanoi, it is a dispute between Tanoim. That is, the two Baisas represents the opposing views of two Tanoim. Yet none. For we learned in a Mishnah, Aezim yoitzois tzerurois. Goats may go out with a pouch tied onto their udders. Rabbi Yossi forbids all of these cases, save for that of the ewes that go out fastened. Right? The Mishnah said that. We saw in the Mishnah, the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, goats may go out with a pouch tied onto their udders if it is used to dry up the milk, but not if it is used to collect the milk. Or if you wish, say that both this Baisa and that Baisa follow Rabbi Yehuda, and yet there is no contradiction between them. Kan li yabish, kan li cholev. Because here the Baisa that permits the goat's pouch, the reference is to a pouch used to dry up the milk. Kan li cholev. And whereas here the Baisa that forbids the pouch, the reference is to a pouch used to collect the milk. Tanya Mabuda Maise Bezin Beis Antuchia. It happened with the goats of Antuchia, Sheuda Den Gasin, that their udders were large. And they made pouches for them so that their udders would not be
lacerated.
They should not be scratched up. They were so large that they dragged on the thorns and were lacerated. So Tanu Rabbon Ma'aseh B'echad Shemeta Ishta. It happened with a certain person that his wife died, V'niach ben Linek, leaving a son to nurse. V'lo hayu lo ischar meniko leitin. And he did not have enough money to pay the fee to a wet nurse. You ever heard of a wet nurse?
Yeah.
Yocheved.
Listen, Moshe's mother.
It said Yocheved.
Right, it's his Moshe. Right.
No, it doesn't say. I'm telling you, it's Yocheved.
Right.
V'nasel nes, this person, a miracle was performed for him. V'niftechu lo dadin kishnei dade isha. His breasts were opened like the two breasts of a woman. Ve'enik is bno, and he nursed his son.
Now it's not such a miracle, unfortunately.
Amar Rav Yosef, bo re'eh kama godel odom zeh. Come and see how great this man was. Shenasel nes kazeh, for such a miracle was performed on his behalf. Amar Abaye, aderabba. Rabbi saw it differently. He said, on the contrary, kama gerua adam zeh, how inferior this man was. Shenishtanu lo sidra bereshis, for natural order was changed on his behalf.
Good for Rabbi. 39 is interesting.
It says 39, he did not merit that the gates of income be opened for him to earn a livelihood in the normal way. That's Rashi. This person certainly had some merit, for otherwise the miracle would not have been performed for him. However, he was inferior in that he was prevented from earning a living in a normal way, and thus had to be sustained with a miracle. A person for whom a miracle is performed must pay for it with merits acquired through his good deeds. His later reward for these deeds is lessened.
Yaakov Latino was worried about this too.
Right. Rav Yehuda said, come and see how difficult it is to provide a person's food. For natural order was changed on this man's behalf. Maharal explains that God provides food on each person's individually, which is an act of divine grace that transcends nature. Moreover, unlike other miracles, the splitting of the Red Sea, which involve a change in matter that already exists, the provision of food entails a more fundamental creation. Providing food is more difficult, i.e. deviates further from the natural order than other miracles. Wow. So they're saying it's harder, that it's more of a deviation from the natural order to earn a living than the splitting of the sea. Amar Nachman Teida, you should know the Misrachish Nisa v'lo Ibu Mezayne. You may know that this is from the fact that miracles happen to save people's lives, but food is not created, which means it is not unusual for God to save people's lives in a miraculous fashion. However, we do not find as often that God miraculously creates food for the righteous, for instance, by causing the amount of wheat in the storehouses to increase. Tanu Rabbanon. Gemara relates another story. Happened with a certain man that he married a woman whose hand had been cut off. So she didn't have any hands.
One hand.
It doesn't say. I just say.
Married a woman whose hand, in English it says, married a woman whose hand had been cut off.
A hand in singular. Okay.
Yeah.
So he did not perceive that her hand was missing until the day of her death. Didn't know.
he was overlooking. He was a special person.
Amarav, bo kama tznoa isha zu, and see how modest this woman was. Shelo ikir bo bailo, for her husband did not perceive that her hand was missing. Amar Avichia said to Rav, Zu darka bekach, that is her way. Which means it is natural for any woman to cover herself, and especially this women who needed to do so. So according to Rashi, it's not natural for women to uncover themselves. So tznius, modesty, is a natural thing. Amar Avichia Zu darka bekach, ela kama tzanu adam zeh. Rather, Rabbi Chia said it's not the greatness over here. It's not on the wife. It's on the man, that he wasn't looking. How modest that he did not perceive that his wife was missing a hand.
When I was in college, I was talking to somebody. I didn't know what they looked like or whatever, and then I met this woman. And she had one of these thalidomide things, and I was like turned off. I'm not such a perfect guy. I couldn't take it.
Zechorim yoitzim levuvin. Rams may go out attached. This term is defined. My levuvin. What is the meaning of levuvim? Amar Ravuna tutare. It means tied together in pairs. My mashma dai levuvim lishna de keruvehu. What indicates that the word levuvim means closeness? Dichtiv shir hashirim libavtani achoisi chalo. You have captured my heart, libavtani, my sister or bride. Song of Song 4, chapter 4, verse 9. God addresses Israel, saying, "You have drawn me close to you through the attractiveness of your deeds." Pasuk employs an allegory in which a husband speaks to his wife using the term of endearment, sister. Olibavtani, which means you have captured my heart, is related to levuvin. This shows that levuvin signifies closeness. It denotes a piece of leather that is tied to rams over their hearts. Why? So that wolves will not fall upon them. Wolves seize an animal at its heart, underbelly. A ram rears itself up on its hind legs to fight a wolf. The wolf then claws at the ram's underbelly. So that's the Chidushei Haran. So this really helps the ram to fight the wolf. So the Gemara objects, do wolves fall only upon male sheep and not upon female sheep? So the Gemara answers, Mishum de masgu bereish edro. The males are attacked because they go at the head of the flock. Uzeivim bereish edro nafle besof edro lo nafle. But do wolves fall only upon the sheep at the head of the flock, but not upon those at the end of the flock? Ela mishum de shamne. Rather, the males are attacked because they are fat. Don't be fat. When a cave was like a shamne, but there are no fat ones among the female sheep. Do you think that the wolves differentiate between male and females? Rather, the male sheep are attacked because they hold their noses up and walk while looking from side to side. Which means, therefore, the wolves are antagonized because they think that the rams want to attack them. it denotes a piece of leather that is tied to rams under the genitals, kedesh lo yalo nekevus, so they will not mount the females. Mimai, from what is this definition derived? In the Ktani Sefer, it is derived from that which the next part of the Mishnah teaches. Ewes may go out held. Shechuzois. My shechuzois. The Gemara says, what does it mean? This word shechuzois. It means that their tails are held upwards, exposing their genitals, so that the males will mount them. It is reasonable to assume that levuvim is related in some way to the word shechuzois, which appears next in the Mishnah. Reisha kedesh shelo yalo al nekevus. The first term levuvin speaks of something done so that the males will not mount the females. V'seifa kedesh yalo al neschorim. And the next term shechuzah speaks of something done so that the males will mount the females. What indicates that this word shechuz denotes exposure? So it is written in Proverbs chapter 7 verse 10. And behold, a woman comes to meet him. She's zoino netzuos exposed like a harlot, and with a surrounded heart. So it says the word shechuzis is formed from the expression shis zoino. Thus it connotes exposure. Literally means the private parts, and thoughts of licentiousness and vice surround her heart. So that's so basically shechuzah is referring to exposure. Buchim to you.
I think